All right, so let me jump into the one last area I wanted to cover, which is users and roles. And first, let me talk about roles. So we've envisioned, just like we did with CalAg permits and with CalPeats, we'd like to have kind of default set of roles that you can start with, and then you can add roles, modify these roles, and assign permissions, as they suit your needs.
We've always been very comfortable with the CalAg permits and CalPeats predefined user roles.
Okay. Good. Well, these work the same way as they do in those systems. There's a whole bunch of different specific permissions, and exactly which screens these enable for you will be part of the user guide, but they're pretty obvious from the name. And you just, click to add a permission to a role. So if I look at, for example, ag user role that has enter ag activity, straight time, simple tracking time, and custom tracking time. So that lets you enter all the different types of, entries that you would, but it wouldn't let that user enter weights and measures inspections or do anything in the weights and measures revenue module. They can't assume user identity, all of those other things.
Got it.
And then as far as user admin goes, there's a lot of things on the user admin role row that we split out into different, so we don't have one gigantic pop-up form that appears for a user. The basic user information, every user has to have an email, and we assume that that email is validated by you when you create a user. It's important that we be able to get in touch with users. So unlike CalAg permits and CalPeats, where a user might have an email, but it might be the wrong email, and so we don't know about it. And then there is a communication preference. So if you don't want to get system notifications to this email, you can put in an alternate email and pick alternate email as your communication preference. We do have SMS text messaging set up in the system. So if you wanted to receive text messages instead of emails about things, you can set up a phone or an alternate phone and choose them as your primary, as your communication preference.
Yeah, Barry and I went through all the way through this, and we actually entered that Bob one just to try it out or whatever. But we'll probably have one set up like this for trappers and so forth, where they can only go in and do the, pest detection, GWIS or whatever, and they're not allowed to go in there and add new users and stuff. Okay. But it's so similar to CalAg permits to where it felt very intuitive.
Cool. So that's users and roles. The roles, same thing. We just pick which roles a user has. Then we have rates, and I'm not going to talk about this screen because it needs some work. But when we get to actually producing the AFS, we need to know for time that's accrued by people what rate was applicable, for those dates. And so,
right. And so let me throw another one out there, and I'm sure you guys already thought of this one, but a lot of times we'll have contracts that don't follow a fiscal year or a calendar year or whatever. So, for instance, Barry Clark will have an MOU with his union that goes from January 1st of this year to December 31st, right? So it'll follow the calendar year. Mm-hmm. And so his rate, he makes, let's say, $10 an hour today, but in July, he's going to be making $11 an hour.
Yep.
And so we need to be able to do things where we say, okay, from this date on, that pay rate changed, but I may still be doing a contract invoice in July that is using his $10 an hour June rate and not the $11 July rate. So, the dates are going to be really important here. And I notice you have like a raw rate and a loaded rate. I assume that's, with benefits and the weighted hourly wage and different counties and different state agencies use different terms for that. But essentially you've got, your regular rate, the rate with benefits, and then like with PERS and everything loaded on it, with the works, right? So you're going to have those different things. And just as long as we do have ways that we could put in those dates so that I could fill out an invoice today that was of a different rate than what he is today. It was like the rate he was last month or whatever.
Okay, so everything that you said there is correct. That's exactly how we envision it. There's 3 different rate types for any given person, and those rates are in effect from beginning this effective date and ending on whatever the next effective date is for a rate change.
Right.
When you generate contract reports and such, you can generate them on any date basis. But if I generate a report for January 1 through December 31 of 2020, and Barry's rate changed on July 11th, then that report is going to reflect the January 1st through July 10th rate for any time entered on those dates. And then it would reflect the July 11th through December 31st rate for time entered on July 11th or after. If, however, your contract specifies that Barry will bill at his January 1st rate for the entire contract, then you'll use a different rate structure, which is not a per employee rate, it's a per labor category rate. And you'll assign Barry a labor category, and then that labor category rate wouldn't change just because Barry's salary changed. So that goes into a different configuration, which is here, which is these labor rate types, labor categories. And again, that's a little bit of work in progress right now. So let's go back and focus on the other aspects of user admin. But that's where you would enter, changes in rates for the raw, the loaded, and the productive rates for a user. And then the other thing we have in here is expected hours. Right? So if you look at your dashboard, you've got this display which tells you how many hours we're expecting for you for each day of the week. And then it color codes your payroll period to say whether you've entered too many, not enough, or exactly the right amount. And we've had a couple of people ask for that same kind of summary row to be added at the top of your timesheet, which I think makes sense. But how we figure out how many hours we expect for you on any given day is set up in this expected hours right here. So we got buttons for your standards, your regular 1080, your 980 with the first Friday off, your 980 with the second Friday off, an 880. And if you have something custom, you can just go in and type in whatever specific values that you would expect a person to work on any given day. But that's what defines what shows here on my dashboard for each day. And that's what color codes these for you.